We've been laughing and making jokes up until this point on a holiday afternoon, but now let's switch gears at least for a little while and learn about something that's quite important that we should know about.
Yes, I admit I too was a little bit ignorant that this was such a still ongoing problem. I have some numbers to, I guess, demonstrate how prevalent it is in some countries.
Oh.
I will share that in just a bit, but we're going to talk about first what inspired this topic, and that is a current drama series airing here in Korea. It's on one of those cable networks. It's called Bossam Steal the Fate, and Uncle Steve, you know Girls' Generation.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's a member of...
You don't have to continue with that Uncle Steve thing.
Okay, he's very upset. So we have Kwon Yuri, who is a member of Girls' Generation, and she's getting some good press or good talk about her role in this.
Okay.
And she's starring with Chung Il-woo. And the series is a very romanticized story of what is actually a very serious thing. But in the drama, basically, Chung Il-woo, he works as like a bride kidnapper middleman.
Oh.
So what he does is he kidnaps these young, beautiful women to wed rich men that pay for his services to do this. And then accidentally, he kidnaps a woman who actually is a princess.
Oh.
And that's when Kwon Yuri comes into the picture, right?
In the drama,
In the drama.
kidnapped from within the country or kidnapped from around the world?
Within the country.
Okay.
In the drama. Yeah. And so she's Princess Soo-kyung. Apparently she was married, but or is she technically? Because her husband, she lost the husband on her wedding day.
Oh.
So she's a princess. Think Aladdin Princess Jasmine. She wants freedom. She wants to see the world. And so, yeah, she's kidnapped and that stinks, but she kind of appreciates sort of being able to see the real world.
So is this a historical drama?
Oh, yes. That's a very important detail.
Okay.
This takes place in the Joseon Kingdom, which is the kingdom that lasted from about late 1300s to 1910, I think. Yeah. So.
All right, so that's the lead into the topic, but this is an actual thing that exists in the world today.
Yes, it is.
All right, we'll find out the details of that when we come back. Here's Magic, Rude. All right, so tell us what we need to know about this topic.
All right, so bride kidnapping, like I said, it does still take place in countries all over the world. Ethiopia, Kazakhstan, parts of South Africa, Armenia were all mentioned, but I think the real one country that seems to be sort of at the forefront of this is Kyrgyzstan. And in Kyrgyzstan, this is such a common thing where I have some figures. They say that 1 in 5 marriages were from a kidnapped bride.
Goodness me.
Yeah. And they say, 12,000 on average about kidnapped a year, where the average age of these women are 19. They say in general, 1 out of all 10 marriages in Kyrgyzstan, the bride is under the age of 18. So, and out of those that are kidnapped, 84% eventually agree to marry.
Oh, whoa.
Which is shocking to me. It's
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask, is that I don't know the geographical size of Kyrgyzstan, but my point was going to be, it wouldn't be that hard, would it? Or would it? I have no idea, to find someone who was taken. But then you said 80% of these actually end up in an agreed marriage, and that's on the closer side to 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that leads me to believe that, is this just part of the culture?
Yeah, so a lot of people, there are two differing arguments. I think generally people think, it's part of our ancient culture. This is just how things have always been done. But then some other professors are saying, no, it's not actually. This is a very relatively recent thing that started.
Oh.
A lot of it stems from the fact that when you get married, the men have to prepare money for the wedding and buy gifts, and there's a lot of financial burden. And so this is sort of like a quick shortcut to avoid that.
It's a way to circumvent that.
Yeah, and also if they can't find a bride. So literally, the groom will be driving around with his friends and be like, that woman looks attractive. I like her. Let's get her. And she's just walking on the street, and then they kidnap her, drag her into the car, and take her to the groom's house. And that's when then the groom's family, female members of the family will come and like sort of try to coerce her to get married. And there's a very symbolic thing. When the bride lets them put a white sort of cloth over her head, sort of like a bride's veil, that's like her unspoken way of being like, okay, fine, I'll do it. You know? Some of the women, if they fight it till the end, after 2 or 3 days, apparently they do end up going home. But here's the thing. In the culture of Kyrgyzstan, apparently, from what the reading I've done anyway, the bride's kind of viewed as tainted. You know, and she's no longer clean or I guess, good for other men to marry.
So many questions here.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing then that in the culture of Kyrgyzstan, it's probably not acceptable isn't the word I'm looking for, but you wouldn't see someone's wife walking alone by herself on the street. And the reason I say that is because then there's the potential of being kidnapped for the purpose of marriage because it's commonly known that men drive around and look for women on the street.
That's what I thought.
Right?
I thought if I lived in Kyrgyzstan and I knew that this was as rampant as it was, I don't think I'd ever walk alone. But there are videos where it's 2 girls like walking together and then one of the friends gets dragged off and the other friend will try to pull on the girl. But the men literally, it's not discreet by any means. They lift her up or hoist her over their shoulder and they are literally shoving her into a car.
This isn't considered criminal activity.
That's a great question. So it has been outlawed in 2013, but apparently only one conviction happened in 2015 ever since 2008.
Which means the police are largely ignoring
They're
it.
just turning a blind eye. And they said that recently they changed it where if you are found guilty, which clearly practically nobody was, you would get up to, that's the key word, 10 years in prison, which before that, when it was less than 10 years in prison, the punishment for stealing sheep was worse than bride kidnapping.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
You said one conviction. And maybe you don't have this statistic. How many cases actually went?
Okay, I don't have that one.
Yeah,
but that's a good one.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I mean, if it's one case actually went to court, that means it's being largely ignored.
Yeah.
If there were thousands of cases that went to court, then it might mean, okay, well, the police are at least trying to do something about this in everyday society, but the court system is largely ignoring it.
No, but I'm guessing that maybe it's just not even being brought to court at all because maybe people's awareness, they're just in their minds, even though this law had passed, it's still like a cultural type of thing.
Yeah.
Because if that one conviction case passed, then that's the parlay for like every other case that comes afterwards.
But it hasn't increased since 2015.
Yeah.
Well, women in general, I don't know the exact numbers, but in general, they're not willing or to report this. I think they're sort of pessimistic with what the outcome would be like.
They are allowed to go. I mean, I'm not saying that this is justifiable at all, but they can, if they show enough resistance, they can go home.
They can, but it's usually sort of a done deal. Like there's sort of a taboo on them.
How did this come to the international spotlight then? Are human rights groups from the international community focused on this now?
Well, see, here's the thing. Like I said, it's been ongoing for a while, and it's sort of one of those things where a very unfortunate incident will sort of bring it back to the news and people will protest it and all this stuff, and then it'll kind of die down again and it'll keep going. There were some really unfortunate incidences where some of the brides that were kidnapped were found dead, or some of them, they did escape and they came back home, but they couldn't get over the trauma of it, that they decided to take, unfortunate measures. So there was another incident where female lawmakers tried to change the law, and apparently a lot of the male lawmakers in the assembly, I don't know what they call it in Kyrgyzstan, but they literally stood up and left.
Really?
Oh.
How did you come across this?
News articles. There's a recent story about a bride victim.
Never heard of that before. Thank you very much for sharing that with us today. We'll leave the first hour there for this afternoon. Please do hang around for the second to wrap up the first. This is from the Busan OST. This is Jong Hong-il, 모난 돌멩이.